Hey everyone, your friend and pal David Pechon here, and let's face it, file servers are not very exciting. In fact, they're perhaps considered a big afterthought in the data center and often neglected. And the only time we really think about these things is whenever they run out of space, or perhaps you get hit with ransomware in the case of SMB shares. I mean, I've had some experience in competing product, and let's just say it's not as easy as what we're about to present today. Nutanix, we have files. It allows you to have a scale-out file system architecture that really takes advantage of the web scale architecture that Nutanix provides. In addition to being able to do SMB and NFS, we can also do multi-protocol. You're probably asking yourself, well, so can a lot of other people. However, what we do provide is an analytics tool that allows you to get a deeper insight into what's going on into your file shares or multiple file servers even, and really be able to be proactive and also keep track of capacity. People are trying to hit up file shares that they're not supposed to be hitting up, and through audit trails and stuff like that. Now, that one particular application I could probably do an entire video on, but we will introduce and kind of run through it a little bit just to give you an idea of what it is at the end of this video. So sit tight, stay tuned. This is Peruse with Pechon. First off, what we want to do is log into Prism Element and click on the menu and go to File Server. And here is really where all of our file servers will be. Now, the staging script, when setting this up, already sets up a file server for, say, when we do boot camps and stuff like that, but we're going to step through it and use the domain controller that I had set up earlier. So first, what we want to do is click on the plus file server link, and we're going to give it a name. Domain name. You give it 2 TB of storage, and of course it's not a whole lot, but again, this is just for demo purposes. We can customize our capacity based on the number of concurrent connections for SMB or throughput with NFS, or we can configure this manually. Now, do we have to do the what's based on performance or anything like that? Probably not. We could scale this out a little bit further, and this way we don't have to worry about scaling it out later on. But for now, we're just going to keep the minimum configuration of 3 virtual machines, as well as 4 vCPUs, 12 gigs of RAM per vCP per machine. And click on Next. Now this part is the network that connects your clients, Active Directory, or any other directory services that are using, as well as DNS or any other network services to the file server. So this is what your end users are going to see. Now we already have a couple of configured VLANs, and I'm going to use secondary for this, and the reason why I will say that. But what we're going to do is use the IP address for the domain controller, or the Windows domain controller I set up as our DNS resolver IP. NTP service, this is all taken from what's configured on the cluster. Normally you don't have to fill this out. However, if you want to, you can also put the domain controller IP addresses just to make sure it's getting that time information from it. This way there's no problems with Windows file shares. Next is going to be what connects the file servers to the CVMs. Now remember I mentioned earlier why we picked the secondaries, because our CVM IP addresses are on the primary. We can't use the same network for both, so normally what I would do is use the same network as I have on my CVMs. So, and you also notice when you set this up, you notice I didn't have to type in any IP addresses, well, mainly because we get those IP addresses from the pools we already configured earlier. Click on Next, and here we can pick what directory services we want to use. For Active Directory is necessary for SMB protocol, so we're going to go ahead and click on that. Because we already put a domain name, it's going to use that for our Active Directory domain name. And it's going to use any administrator, or really any account that can add computers to a domain. Of course, I'm using a default domain administrator account. I don't recommend you do that. What we can do, though, say if we want to use a specific admin account or something for this, we can also make this the file server admin as well. If we click on Show Options, the advanced options, we can preferred domain controller if you want to, as well as the organizational unit. We want to put that within a domain without us manually have to go and move the computer account. We need to overwrite an existing file server computer account. We make sure we can check that box. But what I do want to do is add the DNS entries into the Windows DNS. For NFS, it's a little bit different. You could change it to where it's unmanaged. You could use LDAP or Active Directory even. And even with the advanced NFS options, we can force NFS version 3 or 4 or use both of them at the same time. As well as if we wanted to use NFS version 4, we can provide the domain for that, as authentication is a little bit different between the two protocols. But we're not going to use NFS today, so we're going to leave that unchecked. Click on Next. And here we have our summary. Tells us we got 1 TIBs of storage, 3 file servers, as well as 4 vCPUs each, and 12 gigs of RAM. And it's going to want you to create a protection domain, and that's why this box is checked by default. This is to make sure that snapshots and things like that are done for these. So if you want to use previous versions within Windows clients, it's going to use those snapshots rather than, say, the way Windows Server would do it, which is a lot more efficient. Once we hit create, and that's pretty much it. We've created our first, or really I should say the file server we're going to use for this video. So we're going to give this a little bit of time to complete, and when we come back, we're going to create our first share. All right, now that we have our file server already deployed, we're going to go ahead and create a share. We can click on Share plus Share Export, and give it a name of users, because we're going to make this, say, user home directories. We're going to select our FS01 file server, and we can put in an optional share path if we want, or even our maximum size. SMB is going to be our protocol. Now, if we wanted to, we can actually do multi-protocol, and really this is great. So if you have a mixture of Windows and Linux or /Unix workstations within your environment, this allows you to just have one single share. Of course, there's some work that has to be done to be able to translate user accounts and everything like that for permissions, but it is possible to be able to do that. So let's go through the settings here. We could use a distributed share export type instead of standard, meaning that it's going to be spread across all the file server virtual machines. For something like home directories, we want to go ahead and do that. We want to enable our self-service restore, so this allows for Windows clients to be able to use the previous versions to restore accidentally deleted files or anything like that that they may need to do, basically using the snapshots done by the CVM of the virtual machines. It's able to get that information from. File system compression, if we want to nail for some space savings, but it does kind of take up some CPU resources, things like that. So if you don't feel like you really necessarily need it, we're going to turn that off. We can also enable access-based enumeration. Now, to give you an example of this, a bank, when I was an IT systems architect at a bank I used to work at several years ago. We had one share, but with access-based enumeration, if you only saw what was in the share that you had permissions to. So like each branch had their own folder, but if you worked in that one particular branch, you only saw the one folder for your departmental share. So we're going to go ahead and turn on that. Blocked file types, basically any extension you could think of. Let's go ahead and put one in as MP3. Make sure we put our dot there as the extension. We can also separate it by commas as well if we need to as well. And encrypt SMB3 messages. Basically, this means that Windows clients that could support it, they have to, of course, have a new session, and then it's encrypted once you turn this on. But this allows for the messages to be encrypted in flight, especially useful if you're using encrypted drives within your Nutanix cluster. So we get our summary here and everything. Once we're done with that, we're going to click on Create, and then we'll have our share. So kind of show off a couple of things here when you have an SMB share on Nutanix files. The self-service restore, as well as being able to block file extensions, just to kind of show you how it looks. You can see here, though, I have a file already in my home directory, but what I want to do is restore a file that had been deleted by mistake. So I'm going to right mouse click a blank part over here and click on Properties. Then I go to the Previous Version tab, and then you notice here that I do have a snapshot that was taken earlier today. Thing is, though, is that I don't want to restore the whole thing, but what I can do is click on Open, and there's my file. So from there, and you can show what Windows would show that this was taken 23 minutes ago, I can take the file that was accidentally deleted, go ahead and drag and drop it back over there, and see it's open. In fact, you can even open up the file if you want to check to make sure it's the right version. Is you can open it up from that Explorer window as well. You can see here, oh no, they deleted me. So once we do that, and the same thing with blocking certain types of file extensions. So here I have an MP3. If I go to drag and drop it, it's going to tell me my access is denied. So it's a very basic way to kind of keep people from downloading or really I should say uploading a bunch of stuff you don't really want on your file servers. So to kind of help with keeping them orderly, as you can see. In our last segment here, we're going to go a little briefly on file analytics. So we're here at the file server page in Prism Element, and what we could do is select one of our file servers and click on File Analytics. Now, the thing is, though, because this was only provisioned several hours ago, I'm not going to have a whole lot of data on it. But what I will do is pull up the demo site to kind of give you an idea of what's going on. And here we have menus for dashboard. This is what you see here. For audit trails and anomalies. You can also have a gear icon here, which is to kind of go over if you want to update your data retention, how long logs you want to keep, what's going on, define your anomaly and blacklisting rules, as well as even disable file analytics. And if you need to make sure you get everything you need in there, just to scan the file system one last time, your email configuration, as well as your directory services. You can click on the heart to show the health of the files analytics server. In addition to that, though, go back to the dashboard, you can also select different file servers. So you have statistics for various ones. Now, on the dashboard, we have various parts here where we can manipulate. For instance, the capacity trend chart shows us that we had capacity added sometime in August, but some of it taken away here in September. Data age, just give you a general idea where most of the data that's on here is anywhere from 6 to 12 months old, the vast majority of it. Your top 3 anomaly alerts, as well as things such as permission denials, top 5 active users, top 5 access files, and sometimes if no data is available, we can also change that to perhaps go back to up to the last year, which is what's being retained on here. This shows a distribution of files by type. And we can also click on View Details. It kind of gives us more information on what's going on. For instance, we only have about 117 megabytes of Office documents, and most of it really is what's general under other, basically anything that isn't defined by these other groups. Audit trails, basically this allows us to go into who's doing what. Now we notice Bob is getting a lot of permission denials. And what we could do is we could do an audit trail on Bob. And he's trying to get a hold of what's in his confidential.txt file. And he doesn't have permissions, but it seems here that every so often, Bob is trying to hit up this file in hopes that maybe brute forcing it or something, or perhaps using an application to brute force, accessing it, maybe trying to get some sort of exploit or vulnerability that would allow him to bypass any permissions or anything like that. So this way you could take that, you could even export that as a CSV or a JSON file, as well as print this out to kind of show, hey, this is what's going on, man. What are you doing? We can also do these on IP addresses, files, and folders as well when we do our audit trails. And anomalies are basically if we were to say have a number of operations that happened at one point, it doesn't seem right. For instance, if I wanted to find an anomaly rule, so one is you have permission denied access, let's say 100 of these is done within an hour. We could even do maybe in a shorter interval just to kind of show, so if somebody's trying to brute force their way into something. Depending on what they're trying to do, if it doesn't seem right, we could put these anomalies in here so this way it alerts us. And not only that, though, it'll email us whenever that happens. For instance, if a number of files got deleted at once, all of a sudden things start disappearing. You want to be able to take an active role in stopping that from getting any worse, as well as finding out who's doing this. Somebody's maybe trying to burn bridges or trying to get rid of certain information, things of that sort. And say if we had permission changed and permission denied, or even attributes that are changed as well. Say if ransomware happened to run rampant, being SMB, if the infected client is able to look at right to those shares, it will affect those files. But because of the fact that certain things would change quickly, anomaly rules, you can have it set up to where it alerts you to be able to head that up at the pass. So that's basically files analytics in a nutshell. From here, I'm able to get a better idea of the inside of what's going into my file server. Perhaps in the future, we'll do a much more deeper dive into it to kind of not just understand the value of it and really what sets us apart, because this is included within files, but how you can use this to be able to better manage things. Let's face it, I mean, there's third-party tools that do that, but sometimes it's a pain in the butt to integrate those with your current NAS or even a Windows file server or something like that. This is all integrated and meant to work together. So again, I hope you enjoy this content, and please like, share, and subscribe to it, and y'all have a good evening.